Kraken has fallen. Trump-aligned attorney Sidney Powell pleaded guilty to 6 misdemeanor counts in the Georgia 2020 election interference case Thursday after reaching a plea agreement with the prosecutors, the second defendant in the sweeping case to do so. Powell appeared before Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee to enter her plea just days before her trial was scheduled to begin next week. Let's watch the guilty plea.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Powell, I've been handed a document that's titled Plea of Guilty Form. Is this your signature as well on the second page?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
And ma'am, do you understand that this is a negotiated plea, which means that your attorney and I have reached an agreement, or the state has reached an agreement as to the proposed sentence that will be made to the court?
I do.
Do you understand that the recommendation being made to the court as to this accusation on counts 1 through 6, that you be sentenced to 12 months of probation to run consecutive with one another?
I do.
Do you understand that the state is asking that a $6,000 fine be imposed, a restitution of $2,700 be paid to the state of Georgia, an apology letter be written to the citizens of the state of Georgia, that you truthfully testify at all hearings and proceedings and trials involving the co-defendants in this matter, and that you have no communication with co-defendants, media, or witnesses until this case has been completely closed against all defendants?
I do.
And do you understand as a special condition of this sentence that you are to provide, what you've already done, a recorded proffer to the state, and provide any documents and evidence subject to any lawful privileges asserted in a good faith prior to entering this plea?
I do.
And judges.
All right, so she got off with $6,000, a little probation, and an obligation to testify against Donald Trump.
That's the main thing, and why I've predicted the Georgia indictment specifically for Trump is really bad for him, because there were all these co-defendants, these other defendants, and they're all, the vast majority of them, it's extremely likely, will do exactly what Sidney Powell has done, take a plea agreement, because what the prosecutors, they're really after Donald Trump. The rest of these people, they don't care. The rest of these people are leverage. They're little pieces on the chessboard to move around. And what they're going to get as contingent for all these plea agreements is to have all of those people flip on Trump. To have all of those people testify that this was a criminal conspiracy that he organized and was the head of.
Yep. There's so many co-defendants. You're right. People flag this as a problem for Donald Trump from the beginning. There is going to be more flipping in that courtroom than at a 24-hour Denny's. It's going to be
oh, I love it.
insane. And look, remember what this was all about. This was about, she was initially going to be charged in this trial that was supposed to start on Monday with conspiring to access data from these voting machines, these Dominion voting machines, without having authorization to do so, access to election equipment without authorization. She hired allegedly hired a computer forensics firm to send a team down to Georgia to copy software and data. This is the kind of trial it was going to be. And you can sense that this is not worth the government's time and interest when there's a much, much bigger fish on the line. And we're just getting started. There are 16 remaining defendants, including Rudy Giuliani and Mark Meadows. And Kenneth Cheeseborough, who was also slated to start on Monday, is still going forward on Monday. Barring, sometimes you get closer and closer to these trial start dates and things start to turn. But it is kind of overwhelming to think about how much information is collectively held by all of these people and how much documentary evidence is possessed by all of these people in the form of emails and text messages and stuff, which of course are discoverable. But having these people work with you as opposed to trying to use various kinds of privileges and stuff to keep it from you as best that they can, letting them be able to work with you because they know that it's not going to implicate their own guilt in the process is huge.
And to be clear, I'm not endorsing this. I'm not saying the law ought to be like this. I'm not saying this is ideal from the perspective of due process and working to prove your innocence. To some extent, the existence of prosecutors' incredible ability to charge people and frankly overcharge them necessitates forcing most people to, rather than actually face a trial and face a jury, to make some kind of arrangement. There's a lot of criticisms that progressives and libertarians have had of the criminal justice system along that line. Laws like RICO allowing prosecutors to go after people who are minimally involved in criminal efforts, that's all well reported. That's totally fine. You can think all that. So again, this is not an endorsement. It's just we need to discuss the reality and the likelihood that Trump is in so much trouble, so much legal jeopardy for this reason. And okay, he's running for president. He's going to be facing serious legal charges in multiple jurisdictions. And I mean, it's up to Republican primary voters to decide if they really want to go through with this. With everything on the line, is Joe Biden going to remain in office, or is he going to be unseated by the Republican candidate? I'm just saying maybe you would take into account how much time your standard bearer is going to have for the actual jousting, given all this is going on. You don't have to like it. You can totally think it's unfair and that it's awful what they've done to Donald Trump and that it violates his free speech rights and that it's a deep state plot. You can think all of that. I'm not calling on you to change your mind about any of that. But we have to face reality. And if defeating Joe Biden is important to you, you need to take these things into account because it's happening. It is going to happen. There's no magic solution. No divine presence is going to reach down its hand and rescue Trump from this legal peril. It's serious. It's bad. Wake up.
Do you think there's really a chance that Donald Trump might not be able to be the Republican nominee?
For this reason? Mm-hmm. I think logistically, it's going to be very hard for him to run an actual campaign and win for that reason. Now, Joe Biden is so unpopular and doing so badly in all of those polls, but polls that generally show other Republican candidates doing even better against Joe Biden. So why, for tactical reasons, is this the right choice? But it's not up to me, and I can say that till I'm the blue in the face. It's up to Republican primary voters, and so far they have said we don't care.
I mean, what a wild world if everyone spent a year covering the Trump-Biden head-to-head, and then neither of them, potentially for very different reasons, end up being their respective party nominees.
Voters at large don't want a matchup between these two.
No.
These two are extremely unpopular figures overall. Joe Biden is unpopular within the Democratic Party. Many people Democrats have questions about his age, and at least in the abstract would like a different candidate. Now there's no specific alternative, and it's not like they're saying, we dump him, we want Gavin Newsom. Like that specific demand is not really materializing, I don't think, among Democratic voters. On the Republican side, Trump just has. He has the absolute ironclad loyalty of a healthy contingent of Republican voters, and then you have other voters who like him and like what he did and are not going to go against him and not going to necessarily choose someone instead of him, but are not quite as loyal. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. He has enough people to lock it up.
There is also some evidence that people don't love the Trump election fraud story. Obviously, the base sees it as a reason to rally around him, and they believe in it.
But it's been poison for general election audiences. Poison.
What do you mean? Oh, yes. They don't like it, and the idea that we would really be getting to the nitty-gritty. I mean, I think Democrats, I've said this before, really did themselves a disservice by making the events of literally 1/6 at the Capitol the face of the fraud, the face of what he did wrong. When people start to really be forced to contend with, because it's potentially the Republican nominee that we're talking about, contend with what it meant to submit a fake slate, to conspire to send a fake slate of electors that ignored the electoral will of various states across the country to Congress with the aim of getting the vice president to say, actually, there's some question about which of these is real. I don't know. I guess we got to throw this to the House and have them decide who gets to be president as opposed to the voters' will. I don't think that's going to look good. I don't think people are going to love that. And on top of it just being the presidential candidate in a messy case, the specifics of what he did, I think Americans have really been indoctrinated with the love of democracy, whatever that means. Democrats have been beating that drum, obviously, because they think that saying that the Republican Party is anti-democratic is a good talking point. I don't know that it's a great talking point now. I suspect that it might start to change if we are all publicly witnessing a trial of whether or not Donald Trump, quite literally, not just metaphorically, tried to subvert.
I mean, we've run this experiment. We ran this experiment in the midterms, and the candidates that were most associated with relitigating the 2020 election in Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania lost close races that they could have and should have won in Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada. the Congress would be in Republican hands if you'd had Republican candidates who are just as conservative and have almost identical policies, but had not run their entire campaigns on relitigating the 2020 election. And that is so clear now. It's just, you lose that persuadable chunk of voters. We're a very evenly split country. We're evenly split in a lot of these swing states. And it's so clear now that Trump and Trumpian candidates can't win the people they need to win running on 2020. Nobody wants to run on 2020. Nobody even
wants to
even
think
the Trump
about
diehards. They
2020.
want to talk about the economy. Talk about World War III that Joe Biden's about to get us into. Talk about the things that matter to Americans. Like it doesn't. It's not. It's not what we wanted. We don't want to rerun that.
Okay,
play.
well, that's a good point. Stick around because we will have an upcoming segment where we talk about Vivek Ramaswamy, a challenger to Trump, getting into exactly that issue, World War III, what's going on in the Middle East. So stay tuned. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.